Time is 7:03, calling to order the West Hartford Conservation and Environment Commission. Good evening. My name is Matt Masunis, Chair, and for the record, this public hearing and meeting will be conducted exclusively as a virtual meeting in accordance with the Town Plan and Zoning Commission rules and regulations for the transaction of business and Executive Orders number 7B and 7I issued by Governor Ned Lamont. The public hearings will be broadcast live on television at West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier TV Channel 6098 and stream live on www.whctv.org. For attendance, I'll go by who I see for starters, just to keep it easy. So I see Emily, I see Ted, I see Mr. Daly, and anybody else. Did I miss anyone so far? Recognizing that we may have late entrants as well. All right. Old business. Can I get a motion on previous meeting minutes for February 22nd and March 29th, circulated in advance of this meeting?
Ted Newton, I motion to approve the minutes from March 2021.
Commissioner Daly, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and second for approval of the meeting minutes of March 29th. So let's isolate on that one for a moment. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Minutes of February 22nd were omitted from the motion. Not sure if there's a reason cited so far, but if we have any motions for approval on those minutes as well. I see Mr. Daly's hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. Point of order.
First,
just I know there's yourself, myself, Ted, and Emily on here. Does that constitute a quorum to be able to pass these motions?
The usual question that bedevils us.
I know. I apologize.
And for that reason, in previous meetings, we've shifted approval of meeting minutes to the tail end, but then sometimes forgotten to get that part of the agenda since it was out of order. And thus, that might have precipitated some of these late approvals, including from February. So let's say the answer is yes, and we'll get called out on Robert's rules later, and I'll seek approval from any late entrants.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to be a stickler.
No, that's all right. If the folks at West Hartford Community TV aren't going to be all the sticklers as well in terms of adjudicating that, then we'll call it as it is there. Motion from Masunis to approve February 22nd meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second by Daly. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, nay. And the ayes have it. It's in the history books, my friends. So we have two items on the agenda for tonight. We'll get into a discussion of the Yukon property status. And ahead of that, we have a group of students with us who reached out to me seeking input on a climate emergency resolution draft that they've been working on since some month of the previous year, and they can tell us more. We are delighted to see the youth of West Hartford so civically engaged, of course. And so we wanted to extend that welcome here to present what they're doing for the Conservation and Environment Commission so that that could be received as well as feedback given from an audience broader than just myself. So for that reason, I'll take your names for the record, either singly doing a round robin or just from one individual. You may take your pick. And then I'll invite you to proceed on what you're doing and why, and then getting into the resolution draft itself that you were kind enough to share in advance. And we'll be interested to listen and provide feedback. Thank you so much.
Let's go in round robin. I'm Henry Millward.
I'm Evan Piccioli.
I'm Arlo Tucker.
I'm Zoe Weissman.
I'm Karina Chang.
Okay, so that's all of our members. And now I'd like to say hello to the West Hartford Conservation and Environment Committee. We appreciate the time you have given us to speak with you all tonight, and we are so excited to meet you and tell you about our resolution. We are a group of West Hartford citizens from ages 14 to 44, brought together by a shared love of the town of West Hartford and a concern over climate change. We would like to introduce ourselves. My name, as I said, is Henry Millward. I've lived in West Hartford for 10 years with my wife and 2 children. My family has made so many wonderful memories here. We love biking into the center, to my son's baseball games at Fern Park, and to my daughter's dance classes in Elmwood. And every once in a while, when Grandma comes over, my wife and I can sneak out for fall walks around Wood Pond. I hope West Hartford continues to be a place that is great to live indoors and outdoors. Evan?
Hi, I'm Evan Piccioli, and I'm a freshman at Conard. One of my favorite memories of growing up here in West Hartford are the beautiful, lush parks, such as the Reservoir and Fern Ridge. I, being a runner, love to run through West Hartford parks, breathing the fresh, crisp air and looking at the serene landscapes. My family and I also enjoy going on walks in this town. Sometimes we will walk through the center in the busiest parts, or sometimes we'll go more towards the reservoir to be in the more parts of nature. West Hartford is also a great town for being social. Even with the new COVID-19 restrictions, there are still plenty of places for my friends and I to hang out, like the center or the municipal parks. It goes without saying that West Hartford is second to nothing for being a great town to live in. Arlo?
Hi, my name is Arlo Tucker, and I'm also a freshman at Conard High School. One of my favorite things about West Hartford are the beautiful autumns that we have. I love walking around places like Reservoir, Wolcott Park, and just around my own neighborhood. The wind, the leaves, and the palette of colors in the trees puts me in a positive mood and make me very happy. My memories of this town combine with the feelings of fall and create an experience that I cannot have in any other place. This is one of the things that makes this town so special to me and many other people who live here.
Hello, my name is Zoe, and I am also a freshman at Conard High School. Out of all of the wonderful sights in West Hartford, Elizabeth Park holds a special place in my heart. Every spring and summer, the whole place is in bloom, full of families and gorgeous flowers. The park puts you in awe with its sweet-scented roses, grass, and trees. On Wednesday nights, when they had live music, the lawn would fill up with endless families carrying their dinner in a picnic basket, prepared to enjoy the beautiful scenery. This was the community atmosphere of hundreds of individuals all coming together to enjoy nature and each other's company. The West Hartford spirit of being united over what we love, in this case, the beauty and preciousness of nature.
Chang, and I'm currently on a gap year before I attend William & Mary in the fall. And one of my favorite memories from growing up in West Hartford is visiting Westmore Park. Ever since I was young, I really loved animals, so my parents would bring me there to see the horses, cows, and bunnies that live there. My parents would tell me about the animals' personalities, and we would watch them graze out in the pasture, and we would even pet them sometimes. We also enjoyed walking through the woodsier parts of the park, pointing out the turtles and ducks in the ponds, and simply relishing in the outdoors. It's harder for me to find time now that I'm older and busier, but I still love visiting Westmore whenever I have a free chance to enjoy our town's beautiful weather.
Well, thank you for those introductory comments. You were really regaling us with the poetry of West Hartford environment itself, which maybe we should start every meeting with in some way, shape, or form. Who knows?
Inspirational.
Indeed.
I was just going to say, it sounds like we have more poets than climatologists on this panel here.
We're about to find out, or we're all about to be climatologists. So, what do you guys want to talk about tonight?
Well, Arlo, do you want to tell about the defining experiences? And then we'll move into our different resolutions?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, continuing, these are the defining experiences that make living in West Hartford so special, but if we aren't able to control the rapidly changing climate, many of these experiences that we hold so dear to our hearts will change. If left unchecked, climate change is sure to increase the intensity and frequency of extreme weather, and those events will start to be the ones that characterize living in West Hartford.
To rise to this challenge, our resolution asks the town to do 4 main things. The first one, to create a climate commission that has voting youth representation from Conard and or High School. That commission will serve as a lens to guide the town's decisions toward a greater degree of sustainability.
The second thing we are asking is to create upward political pressure by joining the growing number of towns and cities recognizing climate change as an emergency.
The third thing we're asking for is to pass and implement a 100% clean energy plan, such as the plan the Clean Energy Commission has authored and is being considered by the Public Works and Facilities Subcommittee.
And finally, we would like the town to endorse national carbon pricing as an indispensable tool in the fight against climate change.
Climate change is the great obstacle and challenge of our generation, and putting in the effort to help our environment will in turn affect and aid almost all sectors of society, earth, and human life. Working together, we can create a virtually endless supply of energy to power our daily lives and projects only limited by imagination using renewable energy. We will have whole new industries and jobs born from the product of our dedication. We will have gained a level of international cooperation and goodwill that we can use to tackle any other global challenge. But most of all, for those of us living right here in West Hartford, it's a chance to protect the defining experiences of our community, like Evan's jogs around the reservoir, Arlo's autumns, Karina's trips to Westmore, and my nights at Elizabeth Park.
We thank you for the chance to speak with you today. And while the language of the resolution is still a work in progress, we hope the values of our resolution align with yours and that we can ultimately work together to create a more sustainable future for West Hartford. We will now welcome any questions, reactions, or suggestions you may have about it. Thank you.
Mr. Daly, first blood. For starters, excellent job putting a bow on it right there. That was great. The narrative element that you guys really brought in from your own background experiences, and then tying that into what you were offering here in this civic body, impressively done. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean Daly, Commissioner. A couple of quick questions, if I may. One is, could one of you please expand on what you mean by endorsing the national carbon pricing?
Sure, I can take that. So basically to all of us, we really believe that a national carbon price is one of the most important tools we can use to fight climate change. It's very popular. It's one of the most popular solutions, especially among the business sector. Thousands and thousands of renowned economists have agreed that this is one of the most efficient ways we can lower our greenhouse gas emissions. So we all decided that we would like West Hartford we don't want West Hartford to implement a town carbon price, but rather just voice our town's support for a national carbon price. Does that answer it okay?
Mr. Daly, you're on mute. Feel free to enter.
Yeah, I know. So are you advocating for a government pricing control of carbon emissions, or are you more for a free market control of pricing carbon emissions?
I believe we would let the market function freely, just with price on carbon. And as I don't know if you were able to get a look at the resolution, but we purposefully left the language a little bit more vague there, because we want to be flexible about whether it's a carbon fee dividend or a carbon fee. So.
Very well, and I appreciate that. The other question I have, if I may, Commissioner, Chairman.
You may, sir.
Thank you. The other question I had is, obviously we had the Clean Energy Commission from West Hartford come in to present their plan to us. And as we know, while it's great and everybody can get behind, right, having clean energy and wanting to make sure we watch climate change, there are several initiatives that have unintended consequences. One of them I foresee that's part of the Clean Energy Commission is that they are advocating the use of solar power and the use of creating large amounts of solar panels in the town. And yet we know from research that solar panels are not recyclable. And we could have a major issue with all of these solar panels and not being able to have them recycle, and actually create a bigger environmental hazard than we do with issues with fossil fuels right now. I was wondering if your group has thought about that and your response to that.
I can take that a little bit. Yes, it's definitely an issue that I'm worried about. We've talked a little bit about it in our meetings, and one of the things that we like about the putting a price on carbon is letting the free market figure out the best and most efficient means to lower carbon. And a lot of times we end up picking kind of technological winners and losers. And we can pick incorrectly, or pick ones go too far into one particular technology, like solar, for example, that might have unintended consequences, like you're saying. So if we let people's ingenuity find those most efficient solutions without poor consequences, you're just using economic incentives, we like the chances of a carbon pricing scheme. That being said, there are many problems in the planet right now, and we think we support the CEC's plan in the sense that carbon is probably the most exigent right now. We do have a huge trash problem, and solar panels could be adding to that. But we figure that it's kind of worth the risk at this point, hoping that we can either combine solar with other technologies or find a way to recycle the panels.
Well, thank you. I agreed with you all the way up until you said it's worth the risk. So, because obviously also I have an issue with, as the commission here knows, I have an issue with the wind power issues or the wind power solutions that they're talking about with building wind power off of our coast of Connecticut in our oceans, which could affect our oceans. It causes noise pollution. And as we've seen what recently happened in Texas, wind power doesn't work very well in cold weather. So appreciate your comments, and that helps. I know Emily doesn't agree with me, but I've provided proof points in the past. So
Sean and the remainder of the Conservation Environment Commission can go all day on some of these points. I wanted to give the opportunity for the presenters to respond if they were desirous of that.
Well, one thing I say is that look at the greater good. If the benefits outweigh the potential risk, then I would choose the benefit all the way. So I'm taking the greater good in this scenario. So if it means more noise pollution, but in the long run it's going to look better for us, then I'm going with the better option.
Yeah, I think Evan echoes the calculated risk of solar and wind for us right now. But we are a group that none of us are climatologists. We are just very concerned about the future, both of West Hartford and the planet. And so we're always learning. We're modifying our draft as we go. We want it to appeal to as many, to as broad a possible audience. We believe that for any meaningful action to really work, it's got to encompass as many different views as possible. So we're also interested in hearing what you might favor as potential technologies and something that we can look at and grow from.
Well, as potential technologies go, it depends on the objective. Assuming the objective is to combat climate change. I don't know if anyone was asking me right here, but I've been biting my tongue.
You got the mic. Go.
Yeah. Well, for starters, coal plants are recyclable either, Sean. Grid scale solar and wind power are in the near to intermediate term. They're going to be those tools, as well as, in my opinion, keeping nuclear running as the biggest chunk of zero carbon emissions that exists out there. Others will scale up over time, come up the technology curve and deployment curve. The ones that have been at it for a while are solar and wind, and they can take care of a big chunk as battery energy storage comes down in price and begins to come up the adoption curve as well, to balance out intermittency, both at local and larger grid scale levels. Two things that I wanted to suggest for folks here. I was just listening to a podcast over the weekend. It's from Yale's School of Environment, I think. It's called Pricing Nature. you might be interested in it, and it applies in this sort of scenario with the sorts of things that you're interested in here in terms of the different plans for pricing carbon that are getting pushed on a national level, where the pushback is on the various fronts, and how that all works. So just for the sake of learning, you might be interested in pricing nature, which I only just listened to for the first time. And also of interest, the Carbon X Prize. I don't know if you've heard anything about that competition, but you know, in an ideal world, indeed, leave it to the free market with zero government hand and everything prices itself accordingly. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet when it comes to the tragedy of the commons. You can put the pollution anywhere and everyone has to breathe it. You don't have to pay for it. So the full free market may not have solved that part yet. But what the X Prize is trying to do right there is turn carbon dioxide into some sort of a consumer product in one way or another, so that it does carry a market value, whether you're capturing that out of an industrial process or even out of ambient air and then turning it into sneakers or Legos or a whole variety of things that have been engineered by a number of startups out there. So, you know, give it 10 to 20 years, but, you know, I'm eager to see some sort of activity on that front. For, well, maybe I'll pause right there for other commission members, because I didn't even get into your question yet of feedback on the actual resolution draft. But I can give a few quick hits. I want to leave the other commission members the opportunity, though.
This is Commissioner Ted Newton. I just thought I would, admittedly, a lot of the research and climatology science is well beyond my professional understanding, and I am not as up on it as I would say Matt and Sean are, and probably some of the other commission members. But what I do know is that it is probably essential that there be some market-based incentives for both consumers and for industry to adopt climate change strategies, and that they will be more successful if where the government may be able to lead, but then also stay out of the way and let consumers and industry make rational decisions based on monetary incentives. And so I'm a big believer in crowdsourcing, and that the crowd has more information than any one of us commissioners or any particular government entity. Once you get government involved, there's politics involved, and politics can skew otherwise rational decisions on economics. So the extent, I'm glad to hear that you're looking into national pricing and thinking of some kind of market that would help lead to perhaps more informed and properly risked decisions by industry going forward. So good job on that.
I like that you're also advocating a climate commission, especially with youth representation on there, a place to channel those energies. I think that's great. And I think Mr. Daly would probably think that's great, because then we wouldn't become a climate commission on here. So, you know, that's one additional rationale. Let's see. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So just a couple of things. Yeah, first of all, no, you know me, I'm not for more commissions and more government. But to me, to Commissioner Newton's point, the best way is through the market system, and that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy about your reading about your resolution. Evan, I also loved your pushback and your well-placed arguments. The one thing I would ask you to think about is what I'd like for you guys to do as part of your resolution is to think about, I'm not against wind power or solar power, but I'm against the unintended consequences that it creates. And we do this time and time again in our nation. You may be too young to remember, but I remember when shopping bags were paper bags, and paper bags were considered bad for the environment because it killed trees. And you know what the science told us to do? Go to plastic shopping bags, right? Which today we know is, again, bad for the environment. but it wasn't. The problem was with grocery bags was that the grocery industry was supposed to create a recycling program for those grocery bags. They never did. And so we ended up with those plastic bags in the ocean. Instead, had we created first a recycling program for our garbage, for our plastic grocery bags, we would have been able to save trees and still have an appropriate recycling program and would not have had the problem or the need for a 10-cent tax on grocery bags like we do, plastic grocery bags like we do today. So I'd like for you guys to think about, right, how can you influence the solar industry into creating a recyclable panel so that then I can absolutely support solar energy for our town, because now we have a recycling system and it creates that exact climate change that you want, reducing the climate change that you want. Thanks.
I have some thoughts on that. So for your first point, or one of your points about examining like effects of things that we might not, and the science of resolutions and bills and laws and any motion that might have unintended consequences, we do have a point in our resolution about having a possible climate commission or the government or any sort of system to look through anything that passes through and would be taking effect for its impact on the climate. Because we acknowledge that things might not live up to what they seem to be. And so we would be in support of having a commission or etc. look through bills and laws to look at the environmental impact each has. And about the solar thing and how we could find the motivation for society to create recyclable panels, I think it is worth mentioning that so far no towns in Connecticut have passed any sort of bills for 100% clean energy. And so having West Hartford pass something like that, even if it's not perfect yet, that will drive the innovation and have other towns follow suit. And so we can have that motivation to keep creating renewable energy sources.
Well, let me ask you, what was that goal that you had stated in the resolution? Was it 100% by, was it 2050? And where did that derive from, the 2050 goal target? Remind me.
That's that's from the Clean Energy Commission's plan. It was a 2050 plan. Ideally, that's why we put, other plan. We'd like a more aggressive timeline, ideally, but we appreciate the Clean Energy Commission and how they work with us and want to support their plan. And hopefully there's opportunities to accelerate that timeline as I imagine it's like a Pareto situation where the first 20% is going to take 80% of the energy, and things will hopefully speed up the deeper we get in. But it's going to be a tough start, and I think the 2050 thing is what they thought the best they could do right now. But I'm hoping. I think we're all hoping it'll go faster.
I'm continually surprised. Every few years it seems to go faster and the momentum seems to increase, namely even in terms of various state and national targets aiming at 2035 or 2040, including the state of Connecticut looking at the 2040 target. So the town itself, is a microcosm sharing the same grid for its residents in town. They might achieve it just that much sooner, potentially. But yeah, the Clean Energy Commission, they do great work as well. Cool. So insofar as Conservation Environment Commission is charged by code to protect the integrity of the environment within the territorial limits of the town, I had to read that. Atmospheric air chemistry, Earth seems to, count. So, I think you're barking up the right tree. Any other comments or questions from our members tonight? I want to make sure we can get to both agenda topics within the hour, but I don't want to cut off our guest tonight.
This is Commissioner Newton, just asking a question, I guess, of the group here. Are you looking for feedback on the resolution, and if so, by when?
So our timeline that we are looking at is we are still accepting and looking for feedback. This is maybe our second or third draft of the resolution, and we're looking to have another complete draft of the resolution by September. And then in September, we're hoping to take the new draft to the Community Planning and Economic Development Committee, and then present it to them, and then hopefully present to the town council after.
Great. So Matt, maybe as a commission, because I think it wouldn't be appropriate for us as individual commission members to provide feedback, but for our June meeting, why don't we have as an agenda topic item the review of the resolution draft here, and for us as a commission to provide feedback. Does that make sense? Or determine whether we should provide feedback, I guess.
Yes, I like that idea, Mr. Newton. Would that timeline be helpful for this group? Or would it already have advanced to various town bodies by that point, Community Development and Economic Development Committee, for example?
Mr. Newton said June, correct? The June
Yes,
meeting?
June. So last Monday in June, whatever that date might be.
Yeah, that would be plenty of time. That we would really appreciate that.
Excellent. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And everybody, as usual, take a look at our part of town code for the sort of lens through which we view and provide input. And of course, other areas of town or bodies can view things through their own lenses in terms of evaluating and assessing it. Very cool. Well, as I said at the outset, in response to your poetry of the town of West Hartford, you provide us with inspiration tonight for the volunteer work that we do as residents. So thank you very much for appearing before this body and for providing that inspiration.
We appreciate it, your time. Sorry, Evan, was that you?
Yeah, this is Sean. I just want to say, Zoe, thank you for your arguments. You almost actually changed my mind. So well done. That's not, the other commissioners will tell you that's not always an easy thing with me.
It's typically an almost. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, folks. You're welcome to stay on or drop as you see fit. Feel free to, I don't know about leave your video on if you really want to, but you could feel free to drop that too if so inclined, as we'll get into the next agenda item. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All of you.
Mr. Commissioner, I'm gonna go off and stay back on through my phone, so I might be off camera for a little bit until I get into the car.
I know you wanted to engage on this one. Do you want me to hold for a minute or two for the device change?
If you don't mind, that would be great. Thank you.
I don't mind. Ted, I like that idea. That's a good one for providing enough sufficient review time to formulate something there for feedback. That's great.
It's a pretty long resolution, which is great. But I honestly didn't have a chance to look through it beforehand, and I would imagine that as a commission, the group of us really haven't had a chance to look through it. And if they're looking for our feedback, then that's great. Let's try to give them feedback.
We all get a lot of emails every day. Yeah, sometimes it takes some turnaround time.
I can't tell if Zoe is still with us or not. So I heard
I see
the
it.
video is frozen and it's spinning. So
oh, a little low bandwidth icon right there. Well, good for anyone that wants to stay civically engaged and observe the process of residents volunteering in town.
I thought it was more than coincidental that their presentation came on probably the most beautiful day of the year. I mean, it was just a spectacular day, weather-wise. So you
always root for the good weather, unless you want to solve climate change. that narrative of having a scorcher in the background typically helps, and if
Yeah.
it snows, it typically doesn't.
Can everyone hear
Yeah,
me?
that's true.
Immaterial as that is. Hey, Sean.
Hello.
Okay, so new business agenda item number 2. Why don't I preface this, Sean? I'll buy you that extra minute. When I went to UConn West Hartford for public administration school, it was renowned for its geese, and there was a lot of geese on that property. And every once in a while, there might be a family of turtles in the pond, and as you walk by, they all plop in the pond at the same time, and it was cute because they're trying to avoid humans. But now it seems there's concerns of a different sort on that property that has been brought up to this commission. Mr. Daly, I don't know if you're well positioned to summarize, but feel free to please kick off.
Yes, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. So I've had several neighbors within, as you all know, I do live directly across from the UConn property and on Asylum Avenue. And several of my neighbors, both on Asylum Avenue and the surrounding streets, have come to me verbally and have said that they've seen a rise in issues since, again, the lack of maintenance of the property issue. And so one of the things, my next door neighbor had commented that she just had a rat that they found on the side of her house, never had had an issue before when the property was being maintained. And so I did ask her to, that instead of verbal, because I know I realize it's one thing to verbally tell me and for me to present the commission to the commission, but I asked her if she'd please write in a specific email that I could present to the commission and also talk about, excuse me, talk about how her experiences are very similar to many other residences, like I said, both on Asylum Avenue and the surrounding streets. My biggest issue here is I feel confident that somehow this does fall under the jurisdiction of our commission. What I don't know or don't understand is really what we can do about it, and what solutions we may be able to provide for it. And so I appreciated that you forwarded this, Mr. Chairman, up to the town manager, Matt Hart, and certainly that is one area of the town that needs to be informed. But I also wonder if there are other solutions that we should think of, because, again, as you had eloquently stated earlier, this does seem to fall under our mission and values for the commission. So I'll leave that there for a minute. I do have some ideas, but I really wanted to keep things.
You can't hear you, Sean. You're fading out, at least to me.
Yeah, but I think he was wrapping up that portion of it.
Okay.
And he's right in the sense I had cited before the town code through which Conservation Environment Commission is formed, and looking at it now, there's parts where it shall conduct research into the utilization and possible utilization of land areas of the town, and may coordinate the activities of unofficial bodies organized for similar purposes. Let's see, what else might relate? I'm not sure about the citation of Commissioner of Agriculture and Natural Resources, if there was one for West Hartford, or if that's a reference to state DOA, but may exchange information with the Commissioner of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and may request that Commissioner, with prior approval of Town Council, to assign technical personnel to it for assistance in planning its overall program and for coordinating state and local conservation activities. These sorts of issues do seem to fall under at least the investigatory purview of the CEC. I'm not saying we've got subpoena power, but we shall conduct research, for example, into how this property is being utilized. For the benefit of those who don't have that email in front of them, I had forwarded off that expressed concern to the town manager, and to his credit, he replied promptly that the property, the former Yukon property, is under contract and the prospective owner is conducting its due diligence. The prospective owner has not yet been announced. The health district has informed the town that the tall grass alone will not attract rats. It might attract field mice, but not rats, as they need a food source. I am in communication with the town, in communication with Ideanomics regarding the need to mow the lawn, Ideanomics being the original purchaser. If the town does not retain a contractor within the next week, Ideanomics will be subject to the town's property maintenance code enforced by the health district. The health district is aware. In the interim, the Department of Public Works will mow the public sidewalks and areas adjacent to the playing fields. So, interesting that the varmint sighting was cataloged right there, and we are seeing rats develop, and possibly as a combination of tall grass and perhaps not on-site food sources. That could be something that we subject to a group brainstorm right here, is what might they be attracted to. Not that any of us are what's the term for varmint experts? Varmint experts. But perhaps there is some sort of other characteristic of the neighborhood that is helping draw in or facilitate, those rats, as evidenced by the sightings from that neighborhood. So, we are a town commission made of town residents, and at least one member, and I feel like more than one member, lives directly in that area. So, it's an issue of interest. Mr. Daly, I don't know if you wanted to come back with any additional thoughts on that, because aside from what other members think, which I haven't solicited yet, feel free to weigh in. We, would be assuming to proceed to next steps of what it is that can be done, other than express those concerns and highlight them and give further voice to them on behalf of those residents that had expressed them, so that it amplifies said voices for other town bodies that are taking action, such as the West Hartford Bloomfield Health District, for example, by others.
Well, I appreciate the comments. Are you able to hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, so the first thing I did want to mention was, and I did realize I provided this probably a couple of, or about 10 or 15 minutes prior to our meeting. So I would imagine that the other commissioners have not had a chance to see it, but I did provide data and information where tall grass actually does attract rats and similar rodent. And this is both by, I provided information from a source that is in the West, a source that's in the Midwest, and the most recent email that I provided also cited the New York Department of Health, who recognizes that tall grass is actually a breeding area for rats. So, with all due respect to the town manager, there is clear evidence that that tall grass does attract rodents, because it provides an area of shelter for them from their natural and human enemies. So I appreciate that that there seems to be an agreement from you, Mr. Chairman, that this does fall under our purview, and that it is something that we should probably take up as a subject for future meetings.
So this
I
is
have no objection.
Commissioner Newton. Just thought I'd weigh in on my thoughts here. Sean, I have not read the stuff that you sent on, so I don't know whether the premise that was in Matt Hart's response, which was they need to have a food source, was addressed by any of those articles. Because I think that tall grass in and of itself is not something that will cause the rat problem. It exacerbates a rat problem if there's a food source. But if there's no food source, tall grass by itself doesn't lead to a rat problem. So I think we need to do a couple things. One is this issue came up, I think about 12 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. The health district looked into it several times and determined it was not coming from the Yukon property, but instead it was probably coming from the bridge repair on North Main Street. So I'm not saying that the more recent example didn't come from Yukon, but it wouldn't hurt, I think, in my opinion, to go back to Matt or go to the health district to say, look, it's been 12 months or 16 months since you've come out and taken a look at it. You did that before, why can't you do that now and see if you come to the same conclusion? Because if they say, yeah, we don't see any rats, or there's no food source here, so yeah, there's tall grass. Had there been a food source, it'd been a perfect place for rats to breed. Then I think we need to rely on the experts here, which are the health district folks, and not necessarily, pests. Was it a pest company article? I think you sent one along. Certainly the New York Times is a more reputable source than that. And so if in their article, they did talk about tall grass in and of itself being an attractor of rodents, then certainly we'd want to put some credence into that. But I do feel like we should pursue the local angle here and see if the health district wouldn't mind coming out and taking another look at this.
Thank you, Commissioner Newton. If I may respond, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So two items to that. One is that the article was actually from the New York State Department of Health website.
Okay.
And then secondly, and most important, or two things actually, is I think also we keep forgetting that the pond at Yukon property is actually a food source for the rats. So there is a food source at the Yukon property. And then third, and I realize that this is the conservative person in me, but asking the health department, a government agency, to investigate what could be a government problem is kind of asking the fox to investigate the hen house. So I would really like to see a more, I would like to see a private organization investigate the issue rather than a government organization.
Well, that makes me curious. So is it a private organization of the sort that they are a company that needs to get paid by somebody? And if so, then who would make said payment?
No, yes, that's what I'd like to see. I would like to see the government hire a private organization to do that. But you're right. What may end up happening is if the government doesn't, is not able to do that, then certainly I'd like to see what may happen is, and this is what I'm afraid will happen, is that you'll have the residents start to form a coalition. That coalition then will be politicized, and that coalition then would have to pay for themselves to pay for it. And then if it turns out that the private organization that they hire does find out that the rat problem is related to the Yukon property, that would create a bigger political issue for our town.
Well, that's an interesting string of hypotheticals. So I'll applaud you for assembling it from in the car, and remembering the string of causality throughout. For starters, it wouldn't necessarily be. I'm not saying I don't want that property to get better. I'm fine if my tax dollars go toward the remediation in some way, shape, or form of getting rid of varmints. But if similar to a sewer assessment, districts, whereby an improvement is levied upon just those who benefit from it. If those neighbors formed a coalition to pay for that business to be a private eye and come in as a second set of eyes on the health district, I would have nothing against that approach in itself. But anyway, thoughts from other members on that or overall?
Well, I think it's a bit premature because we've gotten Matt's response.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we should take it at face value. I think that if we feel that that's just a quick response without really considering all the facts, I don't have a problem pushing back on that. Matt, you've already sent the inquiry on behalf of the commission, I believe, over to Matt, and it could be that thanks very much for your response, but wouldn't the pond itself be considered a food source? Would it be possible for the health district to come back and take a second look since they haven't looked there for a while? I think that we're a government commission here, so we should be working through our elected representatives and the town officials, and if that doesn't satisfy people's concerns, then there's nothing that stops people from getting together and hiring an individual company that's not part of the government apparatus to take a look at this. My only question about that would be whether they would have permission to go on the property to be able to do that, because I believe it's still owned by the town of West Hartford, although it may change hands shortly. So somebody's going to have to give permission to go on site to do that. If not the health district, I imagine the health district always has the permission or ability to go into a government-owned property to be able to check out on health issues.
Excellent points. And Mr. Daly, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, Commissioner Daly. Commissioner Newton, that's an excellent point. It is not the town that owns the property, but it is Ideanomics that still owns the property until the official closing of the sale. And you're right, there might be an issue with getting permission from the property owner to be able to get somebody on there. So I think you make a good point there, and something we'll need to think about as far as that challenge is concerned.
Well, these are the nuts and bolts sorts of issues that might not occur to any one of us at first blush until we start to workshop it as a group, right? So the pond as a food source, interesting concept right there. And also my inquiry to the town manager did go out in response to, I think it was your first suggestion, Sean, but not necessarily to the resident who had since put in writing that rat sighting and passed that along to you. So perhaps that could precipitate more enthusiastic investigation into that area. I'm heartened to see that they will have town staff mowing the public sidewalks in adjacent areas. So I suppose that means those areas not under Ideanomics ownership, but under town purview. And then putting Ideanomics under the thumb of the town code in terms of requiring them and taking enforcement action is what that's starting to sound like, or at least informing them that an enforcement action could be forthcoming if they don't reinvigorate their lawn mowing efforts. That's what I took from that.
Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the right approach. I think also there's a second piece to this that we need to discuss, probably not now, but for future agendas, which is once the new owner has been identified and the closing of the sale happens, I think certainly it does fall under this commission's purview to gain firsthand knowledge and have them present as to what their plans are for the property.
I was on mute taking notes, so I don't I've learned my lessons in the past about typing over everyone in the virtual world. That's also a good idea. I like that as well, Mr. Daly. So thank you. We'll memorialize that so that we could remember that for the notes moving forward.
Let me
right.
Please proceed. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Newt, I'm just thinking through that because I believe we did have a representative from that property come and talk about proposed plans for the wetlands there. I believe, right, about 2 or 3 years ago. So I think that not only should they, but they would be compelled to come in front of the commission, at least as we're presently constituted, to present any plans for that property, which I think by definition would include the wetlands.
If I may respond, Mr. Chairman, I totally agree with you, Commissioner Newton. However, of course, one of my fears is that the ownership change is waiting to see what happens at the state level with zoning laws. Because if things do get passed the way they do, it may not matter that there is wetlands there because zoning may be eliminated. I'm over exaggerating to make my point, but there may be zoning changes that would no longer make the zoning commission in West Hartford have any authority over what's built there.
Was that last part also an exaggeration?
I don't think so. Not from what I've read so far. From the bills that are being proposed, it would be Hartford that would decide. It would be Hartford that would decide whether or not what could be built on the property, not West Hartford.
Well, the proposed bill is a far cry from a passed and signed bill, so we'll have to see how this works out by the time it gets to the second week of June. And your point is well taken that perhaps you might have unknowns that are simply waiting on resolution from deciding which way the state's weather vane might start turning in this given year. Interesting.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the commission's time on this subject. It looks like we have a plan to move forward, and that this will remain a subject of interest for us. So I appreciate everyone's time on that.
We'll keep attentive on it. As I said before, I think.
I was just going to say, Sean, since you excuse me, Commissioner Daly, since you live in the neighborhood and already have been in touch with some of the homeowners there, to the extent that you get more pictures or examples or other types of things, the more it becomes not just a couple of sightings here and there, but a real problem. So I don't think we as a commission should ignore a budding problem if the problem is getting bigger. And that means that perhaps there is some other action that we should be taking as a commission, going back to the town management to say, there's a problem here, or at least there looks like there's a problem here, and we need to have some action other than, the health districts looked at it and it's not a problem. So just think we need to keep us abreast if you see more, evidence of this type of thing.
You're on the front line, sir. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So as promised earlier, since we do have quorum now, I'm not going to run a full vote for meeting minute approval once again, as we did at the front end. But Ronnie, if you have any objections to that, feel free to chime in or chat. And otherwise, in my form of Robert's Rules administration on the go, silence is assent. So at least in terms of meeting minutes, and only in terms of those. So anything else from the group or to the good of the group before we adjourn? All righty. Good meeting, everybody. Thanks so much. And we'll be seeing you in June. All right.
Thank you.
Good one.
All right.
Bye-bye.